So hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome. Thank you for coming out on a rainy day. My name is Artemis Leontis, and I'm the C.P. Cavafy Professor of Modern Greek and Comparative Literature, and also I direct the Modern Greek program. And I'm really, really pleased to have you all here so that we can celebrate the inaugural Vakalo Family Fund for visiting artists and scholars in the Modern Greek program. So this is our very first Vakalo Fund visiting artist. And so I want to start by talking a little bit about the fund and to recognize and acknowledge the presence of one Vakalo family member, Kathleen Vakalo, who is physically present with us today and is a graduate of this university in philosophy and in educational psychology. She is also an expert in low-level radioactive waste control and has advocated for citizens at the state level and has in general been an advocate for various causes. I would like to say also that in spirit, we have three other Vakalo family members with us. Emmanuel George Vakalo, Kathleen's late husband, and professor in the School of Architecture and Urban Planning, who is remembered as an inspiring teacher and mentor by faculty and students. Eleni Vakalo, Manos's mother, and a very fine art critic, and also an outstanding poet by any measure. Her poetry can be read in English. She wrote in Greek, but in a very fine translation by Karen Emmerich called Before Lyricism, which was a finalist for the 2018 Best Translated Book Award. Eleni Vakalo was a pathbreaker in getting at the unsettling potencies in the relationship between humans and the natural world. And George Vakalo, Yorgos Vakalo, Manos' father, a surrealist painter, set designer, costume maker, writer, and illustrator of incredible vision. So this Vakalo family altogether was known in Greece for their range of contributions to writing, the visual arts. They started an art school, which is still running, criticism, education, exhibits, and cultural activism. And they were known to me also and to Vasilis, and were friends whom we miss. So Kathleen Vakalo established in 2019 the Vakalo Family Fund in Modern Greek Studies to honor her family's contributions to Greek culture and to continue the connections between the Vakalo family and the University of Michigan by supporting emerging artists and scholars and bringing contemporary Greece, and contemporary is the really important word here, to an international audience above and beyond the achievements of the country's ancient past. Thank you, Kathleen, for the gift and for your presence here, and we're very, very happy to inaugurate it today. So our first Vakalo family visiting artist is Phoebe Giannisi, born in Athens, the author of 8 books of poetry and a book of architecture, with 2 books of poetry translated into English and another one on the way. Poet, performer, advocate for Greek poetry, and professor of architecture at the University of Thessaly with degrees in architecture, philosophy, and classics. Her poetry moves between word, performance, and installation and investigates the connections of poetics with body and practice. Recent work studies animal poetic identities, Greek animal poetic identities, from perspectives that are biographical, anthropological, geographic, musical, and poetic. The world of cicadas and the world of goats. Nomad shepherds, transhumance, music, geography, but also power and control, motherhood, the female beast, and the sovereign. And the question, what does tragedy look like if we put the female goat at the center? So who better to inaugurate the Vakalo Family Visiting Artist and Scholar Series? Indeed, I want to say that Phoebe Giannisi recognizes Eleni Vakalo as a predecessor. Any of you who've read the interview that she gave, you'll remember her words, Vakalo's plants upbringing or her genealogy to collections of poetry were poems that were putting in contact the human with the non-human, with absolute priority to the second, and they were thus totally avant-garde in a way that only today we can understand them in their full spectrum. So today's talk is entitled Chimeras. It references her extraordinary poetic book, Chimera, and it will also present her poetics of chimeras, how it is constructed, how it has evolved through the years of practice. Key elements are music of place with its inherent multiplicity of animal voices, myths and memory, fragments of identity, genre, gender, and the species drawn from ancient Greek poetry and philology. Please welcome Phoebe Giannisi.
Thank you very much, Artemis, for the introduction. I want to start by expressing my gratitude for being here and thank everybody that contributed to this. I feel extremely honored to be the first Vakalo Family Visiting Artist in Modern Greek program at the University of Michigan. I have to go there. No. Do we have what I wear doesn't work. No. Okay. Sorry. So my thanks go to Kathleen Vakalo for her initiative to create the Vakalo Artist Fellowship, to Artemis Leodis for the enthusiastic invitation and for making this happen in very difficult times, to Vasilios Lambropoulos, with whom we have a dialogue for many years now, to Rachel Sutton, where is she? Here, for organizing the whole event. I'm very happy to be here. Προ τον μεν ρα χι μέρα ναι με μακέ την εκέ λεύσε πέφνε μεν είδαρ ίνθι ον γενός σουδ ανθρώπων προ σθελέον ο πίστεν δε δράκον με σίδε χι μέρα δίνον απόπνη ούσα πύρος με νος εθωμένιο και την μεν κατέ πέφνε θέον τέρα εσύ πειθή σας. What I just read is this passage of the Iliad that you see here. It's the first fragment that we have on the, I cannot pronounce it in English, chimera. And I have here a small piece of Vakalo's poetry. I will not read the whole of it, but only something in order to remember the poetry of Vakalo. That, as you heard, is a poetry that has to do with the non-human in a very interesting and progressive way, even if it was written 30 years before or more. Τα φυτά έχουν άλλη από τον ανθρώπων την αγωγή. Ότι δεν κινούνται δεν είναι μοναδικό. Ούτε πως δεν αυτοκτονούν. Τα φυτά είναι μονίμως επαναστατικά. Σκεφτείτε πως την ώρα του φεγγαριού αυξάνουνε τα φυτά. So here we have some definitions of what a chimera is. The one is from the Oxford English Dictionary. The other has to do with biology. The third is coming from Liddell Scott Jones Dictionary. And at the end, I have this word, melos, meli, which is very important for what I do. And I want you to have in mind what it is, melos. It's a part, and at the same time it's a member, a tune, and a melody. So the members of a composite body, that is the body of the chimera, is we can see them in a variety of ways. So we can see what I want to say. The chimera as a mythic animal made of various parts of various animals that are connected together, a kind of monster. But also the first meaning of the word is the female goat, and I will come to that later. And then I wanted to relate this idea of the composite animal to two things. The first has to do with a plurality of disciplines, writings, and voices that are connected to one body, that is the poetic work. Chimera is a composite animal, and she has a correspondence to a composite poetic work using different kinds of media, different kinds of texts and genres, and the continuous passages from the one to the other. And the second issue that is related to this is the question of what's the eye of the poem. That for me has to do also with the multiplicity, as the chimera does. Excuse me, but I will say this word in Greek. I cannot say it in English. So the melos, the song, the melody, the part, every poet navigates among the infinite traces of what has already been written, said and preserved, which today through the internet circulate constantly near and far. I'm always reading when writing. I work on projects and I search for texts, words, their meanings, their citations, images, and sounds. I also collect bits from real life to incorporate, and these are my parts, songs, and the parts of my work. Since I incorporate them inside, I don't leave them outside of the work, I put them inside.
Nostos 6.
Oh, no. So, here you can see a slide from my project called Poetics, which was the first appearance of the project that now is Cicada book. You can see here how I can incorporate the text, the various kinds of texts inside the page. Here, the role of the reader is very important because he makes the movement of the connection of the different parts in between them. So I am constructing something like a page. This is a manuscript that has been exhibited. And then the reader fills the void with his movement, which is a mind movement, a reading movement, and a comprehension movement. And each time, each reading can be different. For me, this is very important. So I think that with this kind of chimeric constructions, the role of the reader or of the other that receives, we are at reception studies, so the one who receives, he's not only receiving, but he's also doing by reading. So my work is chimeric, in the sense of writing genres. I'm writing lyric poems, dialogic poems, poem commentaries, documentary poems. I'm borrowing excerpts. I'm doing essay poems, etc. And I'm using also multiple media, as you will see, video, sound, and performance. So this kind of collection of different fragments makes the work not to be finalized, never finalized. I mean, each time I can do another version of the of the way I collect and I connect the different bits and parts together. So a book can be a phase of this process, and before that it could be several kinds of performances or performative readings in which I incorporate always the different kinds of things and poetry and media. So here, for example, you can see the prototype of the manuscript you see here. It's the manuscript of the Iliad at the gallery at Venice. Yes, it's not gallery, library. And what I imitated was the way the text is presented. Here the central column is the main text of the Iliad, and then around you have all the kinds of commentaries. But for me it's totally the opposite. I have my poems as commentaries, and the central part are here you have passages from Phaedrus, but the whole book has also other passages that have to do with the cicada. So this is the last part, or one of the last parts of the presentation, which is the translation of the book. So the translation of the book is another step towards a final product, which is not final. Φαγουρίζουνε τα φτερά όταν βγαίνουν. Όταν από την έξοδο της κοιλιάς έβγαλες πρώτα το κεφάλι και σπρώχνοντας από τον πόνο πετάχτηκες έξω στο φως για να φωνάξεις Do the wings itch as they sprout? When from the belly's opening you first raise your head and pushing from the pain sprang into the light to cry out. Ήταν τα μάτια σου ανοιχτά? Were your eyes open? Άκουσες τα λόγια αυτών? Did you listen to their words? Που σε κρατούσαν βοηθώντας? As they held gently? Όλο το σώμα συστραμμένο, μαζεμένο, τα πόδια λυγισμένα, your contorted body, gathered, legs stacked, και η μέρα ζεστή. Μία γυναίκα γεννούσε του αυτοκινήτου της το πάτωμα. Κάθε μεγάλωμα άραγε, πονάει σαν το πρώτο. Δεν μεγαλώνει κανείς με τον ίδιο ρυθμό, αδιόρατα? Ή μήπως μετά από περιόδους τάσης, έφνης, η κίνηση σε κατακτά και αυξάνεσαι και ανυπόφορα αλλάζεις? Πετάς από πάνω σου σαν το λουλούδι τα πέταλα μέσα στη δρόσο που ρουφάς κάτι παλιό και ξανά. Κατοικημένος από τις νύχτας τις αγωνίες, ανοίγεις τα πρωινά σου μάτια ανάποδα να κοιτάξεις τον κόσμο. Έχεις μαζέψει τα άστρα, τα κρατάς στα χέρια, τα σκορπάς στο χώμα, την άμμο. Έχεις ψηλώσει πια το δέντρο εσύ. Μας χωράς τη μικρή σου σκιά. Πιο ελαφρύς τώρα, πιο ελαφρύς. What is the I of the poem? Who is the I speaking? Mikhail Bakhtin defined polyphony as the main feature of the novel, in contrast to the lyrical poetry, which is monophonic. Can we imagine a non-monophonic, a polyphonic poetry? In order to resist the canon carnophallogocentrism, as Derrida named it. Mightn't the poetic I merely be a mask that as such could embody more than one speakers, embody a multiplicity, even if we speak about ourselves? In ancient Greek poetry, the I is a performative I spoken by the chorus, a collective I that belongs to a community, or an I acting out a dramatic or a ritual role, reenacting the mythic persona the writer had reenacted through her writing. So here we have some passages from, the one is from Deleuze, and the other two are from the Socratic Phaedrus, because my idea here was to relate to you three stories. So the first story has to do with the becoming. And here in the Socratic Phaedrus, Platonic Phaedrus, but in this book, in the beginning, we have a question that Phaedrus addresses to Socrates. If he believes in local myths about gods that are abducting, and he says, and if he believes in the existence of beings such as the chimera or the centaur. And Socrates replies with this very famous reply that if he doesn't know himself, if he cannot answer the first question, that is, who himself is, single or composite being, he cannot answer the other questions. There is no meaning on answering them. So when somebody writes, and when I am right, I'm in the process of finding who is this voice that I speak, whose that voice belongs. Not who am I, but who is uttering that other voice. Do I pay the due respect to whom the voice belongs? But I have to make this voice free regardless to whom it belongs. So this is a question of becoming. Okay. So I find the whole Phaedrus dialogue as a kind of simile that reenacts this initial question inside the book. Because, for example, here you have this small passage which says, while taking in through the eyes the outflow of beauty, the soul becomes warmer and the growth of its wings is moistened. And the more the temperature rises, everything around the place of the wings sprouting melts, whereas it used to be compact and hard, thus obstructing the wings formation. But with the nourishment received, the stalk of the wing fleshes out and strives to grow right from the root throughout the soul, because in all times the soul used to be winged in its entirety. So here this passage speaks about a becoming, of a growing of the wings, and this growing of the wings has to do with love and what love brings to the lover, the one who loves. And I think that at the same time Socrates speaks also about how we can find another way to speak about things, because in the whole dialogue he moves in different positions in order to speak about love, and some of these positions are not true, as he says, are false. So he has after that do a reincantation and do another kind of song. So he's like a cicada for me. In the beginning he's under the earth, he's covered, you will see that in the video I have made, and then he goes out and he finds the real voice with which he wants to speak about love. So I don't really read anything of what I have here. So a poem that is about this kind of becoming that also comes every year in spring. So now you have the translation here, it's by Brian Sneeden, always the translation. Κάθε άνοιξη κάνω ξανά την κηδεία του εαυτού μου. Κηδεύω τις άλλες, τις προηγούμενες ανοίξεις. Κηδεύω αυτή την άνοιξη που δεν είναι σαν τις άλλες. Κηδεύω τον εαυτό μου την άνοιξη για να σουρθώ μέσα στο σώμα μου το καλοκαίρι, να αρπαχτώ από το ξεραμένο του τομάρι το φθινόπορο και το χειμώνα πεισματικά να επιμείνω στο φάντασμα του καταναγκασμού μου. Ναι, ο χειμώνας θα μπορούσε να έχει την απόλυτη ελευθερία, την ύπαρξη στην απεραντοσύνη, του μογγόλικου οροπεδίου τον καλπασμό, των μαλλιαρών στολισμένων αλόγων, τα λόγια των τραγουδιστών μιας άλλης εποχής αφηγητών. Αλλά, εκεί, στο τέλος του χειμώνα, μέσα στην κούραση, τον γάματο της προγραμματισμένης καθημερινότητας, ένα αστέρι μπορεί έφνης να αστράψει στον ουρανό τη σκούπα ίνου που πίνουμε μοναχικά μαζί και η λάμψη του άστρου να μας ξεστρατήσει, σε παλιά μονοπάτια οδηγώντας για να τα ανοίξουμε ξανά. Χρέος μας αυτό το άνοιγμα. Τα μονοπάτια σχεδόν έκλεισαν από κλαδιά και φτέρες. Μέρος του χρέους η εγκατάλειψη. Ξανά και ξανά, κάθε χρόνο, κυδεύουμε αυτό εκεί που προϋπήρξαμε και πίσω το αφήνουμε. Ένα έκδημα στο σχήμα του. Ένα μοναδικό έκδημα διαφορετικό, καθένα από τα άλλα πολλαπλό. Το θάβουμε σε τελετή μέσα στα χόρτα, το αφήνουμε στον στυλβωμένο μίσχο του ξερόχορτου που ξεριζώσαμε και πάνω του ήταν κολλημένο, το θάβουμε στην άμμο, στη θάλασσα το ρίχνουμε. Στο δρόμο συναντούμε γυναίκες να κρατούν μπουκέτα αγριολούλουδα στα χέρια, με όψη περισυλλογής. Αργά και βασανιστικά αρχίζουμε να ξεχερσώνουμε τους δρόμους, κίνδες στον ενδιάμεσο χώρο του μισοανοιγμένου. Κάτω από το χώμα, σε μυριάδες πλάσματα, κοιμάται η άνοιξη. So here you can see a kind of reinterpretation of this becoming with a reenactment during video performance of different fragments that have to do with the Cicada in ancient Greek poetry and texts. For example, here the first scene is the scene when Socrates speaks with his head covered because he doesn't say the truth. This is the metamorphosis of the Cicada, and what you heard is the passage, the Platonic passage about Eros. So one idea of the becoming is becoming through writing, and the other is becoming through performing or through reenacting other texts that are not mine, or making them in a way close. Here you see the exoskeleton of the cicada. These are left on the trees, and they can stay there for years. You have seen the process of the metamorphosis. That's what's left behind that. So the end of the previous poem was referring to that. This I didn't want to show it, but I brought it because of Ruth, that she's working on Works and Days. And this is the passage from Works and Days that speaks about the emergence of the cicadas in summer. Okay, we can go like that. Sorry. So here is another scene that I love very much, and it's about the relationship of the voice of the cicada to this of the donkey, which is the subject of many myths of Aesopus. And here, this comes from Archilochus. You caught a cicada by the wing. This is the one that has to do with the voice of the donkey that wants to imitate the cicada but cannot because he thinks that if he eats the same, he can have the same voice, but then he doesn't eat and he dies. No, this is a Homeric expression. Sorry. And this is the last scene, and this has to do with the myth of Tithonus, which is the lover of the goddess of Eos, the dawn. And he asked for her to be immortal, but he didn't ask to stay forever young. So then she cannot see him anymore, and she puts him in a kind of a thalamus, a room, where the only thing that stays is his voice that comes out of the box. So this basket is a kind of a box. Oh, yeah. So this is the image of the metamorphosis, where two beings are together, the one that is the previous one and the other that is the next one. And I think I find this image very attractive because it says a lot about what happens when somebody leaves a passage, leaves something from his previous life and goes to another stage. But this is the same when we write or when we make poetry. We have to leave something behind in order to be something else and to find another voice. And about the cicada, I did this exhibition, so that's the multiple ways with which I am doing the work. Here you see the exoskeleton. Here you see the chapters of the book that have to do with cicadas, the land, cicadas' ecdysis, love, and the emergence of wings. These are the chapters: desire, sleep, mating, lust, erotic battle, heat, voice, end of desire, death. And this is the installation where the reader was in a way recreating the text, because there were 10 lecterns with manuscripts, and one could move and read the one after the other. But you see that they don't have a real kind of the one of structure. And here you can see how this can be a reenactment in a polyphonic way. You can hear, if you hear, I don't know why it doesn't work. This is made by 10 friends and poets and artists that were reading together. You cannot listen very well, no? Okay. Okay, Now here the second story has to do with Ethnomos, and it's a story that speaks about the cicada again, but tells us about these 2 or 3 things that I'm writing there. I'm going to read the end of the story. It's from Clement of Alexandria, and it has to do with a Kithara lira player who was in a competition. So he comes from a place where there is no he comes from a place where there are cicadas. The other comes from a place that doesn't have. So it's a story about that, but the end of the story, to cut it short, says, a string brings in the Locrian's hands. The cicada settles upon the neck of the lyre and begins to twitter there as if upon a branch, whereupon the minstrel, by adapting his music to the cicada's lay, supplied the place of the missing string. So it was not Ethnomos that drew the cicada by his song, as the legend would have it, when it set up the bronze figure at Pytho, showing Ethnomos with his lyre and his ally in the contest. No, the cicada flew of its own accord and sang of its own accord, although the Greeks thought it to have been responsive to music. So what we have here for me, and it's important, is that the man who plays music, or the human being that plays music or sings, is part of something, is not alone. And this something is the environment, and it plays the same role, or even better, it can substitute his song. The song of the environment can substitute the song of the person who is doing poetry. And at the same time, it makes us think about how music and poetry are not something that have to do with a person alone, but with a kind of symbiotic situation. So here, it's very important for me to say that for Jespers Vembro, who follows a German philologist, the etymology of ego, I, comes from here, εδώ. So then the I speaking is not a person, but a place, with all the beings which inhabit it, and as the voice delivers verses, it encounters all the beings that can be heard at that place, wind, the sea, voices of other beings, and the articulation of the voice in the landscape introduces a fountain multiplicity, because the place is by constitution polyphonic. So that's something that is very important. Here, for example, this comes from my book Homerica. In that book, after writing the poems in certain parts of Thessaly, I did the publication on the book, and together with that, I did a series of recordings that were made in specific places that had to do with either with the myth that was incorporated in the poem, either with the atmosphere of the place, which I thought that could add to this of the poem. So you can hear a little bit, I don't put the whole poem.
Θέτης, αυτή που τίθεται, ίσως, πάντα αυτή που θέτει. Όπως γνωρίζουμε ακόμα αυτή που αρνήθηκε να τεθεί, στον άνδρα να παραδοθεί. Γενόμενη, φωτιά, άνεμος, νερό, δέντρο, όρνηθα, τίγρη. Γενόμενη, λιοντάρι, φίδι, σουπιά. Ώσπου κάποτε, στο ακροτήριο Σιπιάς, ο θνητός την έθεσε γερά κρατώντας. Με σταθερή λαβή τη Λία κατέκτησε και την έφαγε.
Oh, what happened? Okay, sorry. I wanted to go further, but... So this is another kind of polyphonic situation where you have the shepherd You have the music of the bells,
που έμειναν βοσκοί,
the animals that are
περιφέρονται,
bleeding, and me
όπως οι νομάδες,
that I am reading.
με τα κοπάδια τους και τις οικογένειές τους.
Okay. So, and here is the polyphony of the book as a place which can have can contain all the other voices together. And here is the final book of this project, Chimera, where I try to incorporate in the form of the book what has been incorporated in something that I will show you later. So here again you have the polyphony of the book as a real space, which includes. And my last book, Thetis and Aidon, where again it's the same kind of experiment, and where I do have also there are together pieces from ancient poetry, commentaries, and images. And the third story, if I have, how many time do I have? Okay, it's about Keramvos. Keramvos, it's a history of metamorphosis again. Not history, a myth. And so, Keramvos, son of Epsiros, is from Antoninus Liberalis, who was the son of Poseidon, etc., etc., lived in the land of the Melians on the spurs of Mount Othris. He had numerous flocks and herded them himself. Nymphe would help him, since he delighted them as he sang among the mountains. He is said to have been the best singer of those days and was famous for his rural songs. In those hills he devised the shepherd's pipes and was the first to teach mankind to play the lyre, composing many beautiful songs. It is said that because of this the nymphe one day became visible to Keramvos as they danced to the strumming of his lyre. Pan, in goodwill, gave him this advice: to leave Othris and pasture his flocks on the plain, for the coming winter was going to be exceptionally and unbelievably severe. Keramvos, with the arrogance of youth, decided, as though smitten by some god, not to drive his beasts from Othris to the plain. He also uttered graceless and mindless things to the nymphe. After a short while there came a sudden frost and the streams froze. Much snow fell on the flocks of Keramvos, and they were lost to sight as well as were the trees and paths. The nymphe, in anger against Keramvos because of his slanders, changed him into a wood-gnawing Keramvix beetle. He can be seen on trunks and has hooked teeth, ever moving his jaws together. He is black, long, and has hard wings like a great dung beetle. You can see him here. Here he's dead. So, Keramvix is a first kind of chimera. He's a hybrid being, as you see, and he reminds also of the lyre he invented. So Jesper Svembro, in this book that it's called La Tortue et la Lyre dans l'atelier du mythe antique, he gives this explanation about that myth. He says that the obligation of the poet is to live on the mountains in order to write, to compose. And what he means by that, he can be isolated for a certain period in order to be able to do his work. But then he has to come back and deliver what he does to the public. I mean, he has to come back to the public sphere. So what he does cannot be left invisible, cannot be left, and he also cannot have it for himself. So his role is to do this double kind of transhumance movement from the mountain to the plain and the city. So this is the final project I'm going to show you that has to do with that. This is the shepherd of the pen that I visited for several years in order to understand what happens with the goats and the she-goat. That was the first meaning of chimera, as I told you. Here you see the shepherds. These shepherds are vlachs. They belong to a minority of a people that is nomadic, doesn't live in one place. They are practicing transhumance, and they have a separate language that was prohibited for several years in Greece to speak in public, and it was not even taught in the schools. They had to speak among themselves in order to conserve that language, and now it's spoken by less and less people. So these people were blacks, and also what interested me in that project was very much also questions of power, because we are speaking about a minority in contrast with the rest of the Greek people, but the shepherd is the one who takes absolute command of the animals, and he has a symbiosis with the animals and takes care of them, and a good care. He loves them, but at the same time he kills them and he takes advantage of them. So it is this double plane between the idea of taking care, being a companion, and from the other point of view, being the absolute master. And also at this same civilization, the women are also like the goats. They are the goats of the men. They have a similar position. So we have several kinds of power positions that depend on for whom we are speaking of. I don't know. So here you can see on the map the itinerary of these people that goes for 300 kilometers and from lowlands to highlands, and it used to be walking, but now they are doing using trucks. Here you see a little bit this idea about the goat and the woman. So I create this voice inside the book, which is called ego, which is a name that comes from the goat, and it's something. It sounds in Greek something like I goat. So it's I, but at the same time is me, the goat. And here is what I did before doing the book that I spoke you about it, and it's called the Aegis. It's a parchment made of a goat's leather, and it's wearable. I wear it. You will see later how I do that. I use that as a map, the map of the body of the animal. At each part of this map, I have written bits and parts of collected fragments and my poetry that had to do with these parts mainly. So if I was referring to the feet, if I was writing to the feet here, you see there, it was questions that had to do with transhumance and the movement. Or when I'm writing around the neck, it has to do with sacrifice. I use passages that have to do with sacrifice. And then if you can see this line, the red line that comes it comes that way. It is the line of the map of the transhumans. On it, there is an inscription of verses of the Homeric hymn to Hermes, where he says he passed from mountains, etc., etc. And here you can see it's semi-transparent, so both sides. From the other part, I have drawn a map of Greece, so you can see both of these parts. And here you can see how I wear it. No. This is the Aegis, the processed hide of a female animal. It's a parchment. They used to make books out of parchment. A saying. Everything a god did, you can see on its hide. Wherever she climbed, whatever she ate, you can see it on the hide. This is the Aegis. It's my mask, my shield. Half human, half the earth, the land. So here is a performance that I did in a pen. I think that's one of the best experiences in my life, to read for the animals. So the animals were kind of a chorus that was responding to what I was saying and to my movements. I mean, I had to be very quiet. I couldn't move very much because they got frightened. But then when one of them came and kissed me, so it was really something I loved to do, and I wanted to bring it here to show it to you. And here you can see something that is very important, something that was, I said you about it before, the kind of taking care of the shepherd of the goat.
Να του μιλήσαμε κουρέας του, στους ανθρώπους. Και η γυναίκα που κούρεψα την παρόλα. Την παρόλα με λέει να μην κουρέψω. Πρέπει να θυμάσαι η γυναίκα πώς την κουρέψω. Έβρα κουρέψε, μιλέ, την κούρεψα. Αυτά είναι χαρίσματα στον άνθρωπο, δεν μπορείς να τα βρεις με τίποτε. Εγώ γεννήθηκα για αυτή τη δουλειά. Άμα μου πεις τι παράγει η κτηνοτροφία, είμαι μέσα να στα πω τα πάντα. Τα πάντα, δεν υπάρχει τίποτα, γιατί από τα γενοφάσκια που ξεκίνησα ήμουν μέσα.
So you see how I was present there, because it's like an industry. They make sex all together, so they get pregnant all together, and they give birth all together. So you can be in a place like that, which is fenced around outside, and you must not move at all. He said to me not move, to be very quiet, and then the goats give birth, the one after the other, and the shepherd is there, and he knows very well what happens to each of them and whether one of them has to get help or not. You saw here, I couldn't imagine. He approached suddenly and he did that like that because she couldn't give birth. It was her first, he said to me after that. So the question of who has the power and who is the observer and who is not the observer, this problem was very crucial to this research and poetic work, and I will finish with that. I decided to make a film by the goat. So it's the goat who wears a small camera while goes herding to get feed for several hours. So you don't have any horizon. I mean, the horizon doesn't exist. Of course, she doesn't care of whether she wears that or not. And she's gone with the others. So I will read you in order to understand what was the place of these shepherds inside the Greek community. A very small passage from the archives of the state of Greece. Να απομακρυνθώσιν επίσης εις μακρινάς επαρχίας όλοι εν γέννη βλαχοποιημένες αρακατσάνοι, διότι πάντες ούτι ανεξαιρέτως θεωρούντες ως θεμητήν την ληστείαν, υποθάλπως σε καθέξιν αυτούς εξ συμφέροντος και διότι πολλοί εξ αυτών συνδέονται διασυγγενείες με το των υπαρχόντων ληστών, πάντες δε έχουσεν υπέρ αυτών φιλετικά συμπαθίας και θεωρούσι καθέξιν ως αρετήν την υπόθαλψή των. Greek State Archives, 1873. All the Vlach pastoral Sarakatsani should also be moved to faraway provinces, for all of them without exception, considering as they do robbery to be desirable, supported for their own interest, but also because many of them are linked by blood to the current bandits, and being sympathetic towards them on the grounds of race too, consider it a virtue to abet them. I am locked inside the cave of the Cyclops, with his solitary eye guarding me. I stay awake. Cyclops, open the door for me. Cyclops, let me live. The Cyclops caresses the fuzz on my back, lights a fire, rubs his hands, eats my meat, my cheese, my wine, sleeps happily still guarding me, burps with his solitary eye open. Είμαι κλεισμένη στη σπηλιά του Κύκλοπα. Το ένα, μοναδικό του μάτι, με φρουρεί. Εγώ αγρυπνώ. Κύκλοπα, άνοιξέ μου την πόρτα. Κύκλοπα, άφησέ με να φύγω. Ο Κύκλοπας χαϊδεύει το τρίχωμα της ράχης μου. Ανάβει φωτιά. Τρίβει τα χέρια. Τρώει το κρέας, το τυρί, το κρασί μου. Κοιμάται ευτυχισμένος ενώ με φυλάει. Ρεύεται. Με το ένα μοναδικό του μάτι ανοιχτό. Thank you.
To take questions. I'm looking for the
Yeah?
microphone. The microphone.
I don't know. This is the microphone, no? Do you want?
This one. Yeah. Do you want to take questions? Yeah. So
That's the purpose.
what a great creative presentation. Really unlike anything that has happened in this room before. Thank you.
Better.
Yeah. So people have questions for Fivi. Vasilis.
Thank you for this great talk. Watching you read your work live and on the screen and in video clips and so on, I'm always puzzled about the position of and the responsibility of the reader. That is, I go to a bookstore, I buy your book.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the equivalent reception, the appropriate reception to your performative writing? Should I read the book out loud? Should I go out in my backyard or in my balcony and recite the poem for everybody to hear?
It would be nice.
Should I use that piece of cloth that you just used to cover my face? What would be, if I wanted to do something truly Giannisian, what might that be?
Thank you for the question, Vasilis. I think whatever you like. I mean, that's the good thing about writing. It can circulate, and then whoever has the writing in his hands can do whatever he likes with that. So, I mean, you could do everything. It would be very nice for me if you could go outside and read it aloud. But also, you can read it in your house. I mean, I'm not so... I'm doing these performances. That's a very funny thing for me, because in the beginning, when I started writing poetry, I didn't read aloud and I didn't read in public. And the first time I have been invited to read, I said, you know me, I don't read, I say. And then they told me, no, please come. And I said, I have never done that. I feel ashamed. And then I saw that I can find a way to do it. And that's why I started doing it, because the way I found was something I liked to do myself. So it has to do with where you feel good. I mean, poetry for me is something that we can be in touch only if we are in total freedom of how we want to be in touch with that. So I don't know if it's a good answer, but that's my answer. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you for this fascinating and intriguing presentation. I have a question. I was very curious about this poem that you read. I think it was about the birth of the cicada. Mm-hmm. And you had part of the poem in the form of questions. And I was thinking that when we pose a question, this is because we don't know the answer, right? And since your topic is in dialogue with science, mm-hmm. like zoology, I was curious whether you are trying to assume the role of a scientist when they are performing an experiment. So, take a step back and pose the question. Was that intentional in that sense?
I don't remember. I am using bits of science. For example, for the biology of this insect, I didn't know that. I was the first thing that made me love this insect was the music, the summer music it creates. Even if for some people it's totally out of question, they cannot bear the sound. It's very loud. But for me, if it's summer, I want to hear that. So to listen to that song. So I learned about the life of the cicada, and I incorporated what I learned inside what I was doing. But I don't know if I am using also the style of it. That could be very Bakhtinian, polyphonic, because Bakhtin, that's what he says, I think. In what poem did I do that? In which?
It was, I don't remember the title, I'm sorry for that. It was when you were asking, were you in pain as you were...
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't imitate the scientific person. But if you can hear it, it means that it is something inside that. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I love your presentation, including all the various polyphonic forms, and I was really struck by what looked like your notebook, where you had the Phaedrus and then your own poems in notes, and that's something that's really hard to do in actual publishing. So in some ways your books are then, this is I think what Vasilis was also getting at, like there's so many forms in which you perform. We saw a little bit of the movement of the goat. Have you ever considered dancing? I was wondering, I was thinking through all the different performances, and each of them is so different and captures something different about your poetry.
I did that. Okay. In that video you saw with that I am wearing the garment, I did it, but I think it was not because it was pre-scheduled. I didn't love it so much. Then when I did a presentation of another book, and during this presentation I distributed pages of the book to the auditorium, and then they would read. I didn't read, they read. And then after that, at the end, that I had a little bit to read, and I had this kind of basket in my head. I am also creating, I didn't show you now, something like sound files that have bits of a poem, then music, then the atmosphere, the sound atmosphere of the cicadas, etc., and goes like that. And at the end, there is a song. So I did that at the end, and it was very good. I mean, I think it was good. So for me, that I have to practice in order to do that. But it's a good idea. I don't know if I will do it finally.
Thank you so much. You play so much with this metaphor of the cicada for the winged soul, but this word, of course, psyche, for the ancient Greeks was also the butterfly, with the same metamorphosis and the same idea. So is this a metaphor that you also use, or do you have reasons for preferring the cicada?
Because of the music. Yeah. It's a very big difference. Yeah. I like the butterflies, but they don't, you cannot hear them. So, yes.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for this presentation. I'm curious about the fabric that you held up in the end. Yes, it looks like something traditional from Thessaly.
Yes, it is.
And I was wondering if we could make a map for it, like the one with the nomadic people from Thessaly to Ann Arbor. What would that like? What would that look like?
To make a map of it?
The line, like the map you had for the nomadic people. Like I was wondering how much this has traveled.
Big woven also, but this is, it's from these people. It's from the shepherd, these nomads, and this is an apron. So it's for the women. So it's also a sign of femininity. It covers here this place, and it has. All this is symbolic. I don't know how you read it, but all these designs here, they are symbolic. And the triangles inside the triangles. So when I did this project, I found that my mom had bought that several years before at Metovo, where they used to weave. And these people weave a lot. They also have portable. They had, not now. They used to have portable. Πώς λέμε αργαλιό? Looms. Portable looms that they were bringing and setting down, and then they were constantly working on that. And this is also made by the wool of the goats, which is much more dry, and it's not soft. So it has several connotations with the project, and it's a good idea to think about how it would be to make a map. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Perhaps it is already a map. That's the most funny thing. Yeah. So if you want to see afterwards, you can. Doesn't destroy, it's very hard.
Thank you so much for this wonderful performance and talk. I'm curious about the role of the maybe you can speak a little bit more about the role of the translator, in particular this motif, and I think almost a kind of community or political project of pluralizing or displacing the poetic ego and giving voice and agency and sharing voice. Like you put the cicada in your mouth and you share the voice, and you're sharing the performative I with people. And I'm wondering how you see the role of the translator, how collaboration with Brian Sneeden has been in the past, how a project like this might become a translation project, and how translation fits into this polyphony.
As I said, I find translation as a step in between the others, and very important one, because it can bring something to others. So it can be a place of sharing the translation. I think that I make the life of Brian's difficult with the translations he has to do. He wants to do them, but sometimes it's very difficult. So we discuss a lot about that, and sometimes we don't agree. We had this conversation with Artemis in the morning. For example, when I translate, I don't translate from other languages. I don't know why, except from ancient Greek. Sometimes I translate, but not very often. But when I translate from the ancient Greek, I don't try to make the text readable. I mean, I leave the strange thing inside. But I think Brian has the opposite attitude. He wants to make it more accessible. So sometimes we don't agree. But the final decision is his. He's doing it, and I think I have to trust him. So that's my position. I know that there are people that make quarrels and then stop the collaboration. But for me, it's also a kind of friendship. I mean, translating is a kind of friendship. And the questions the translator poses to you are the most brilliant because they know the detail of what they have to translate. So they have to understand things that you don't even know that they exist inside. Derrida was saying that the translators are the best readers. Point. So I respect them also. Yeah. But it's difficult. I mean, this project with the goats, I think that's the most difficult of all. I don't know what you will do with that. It has, for example, things that are not even translatable in Greek. So, because they come from the Vlach language, or they are expression of the shepherds that nobody understands except them. So how can he do that? I don't know. We will see. Yeah.
I wanted to recognize, Phoebe, the hard work that you're doing here of translating, just by being here and speaking in English about your project.
Not easy for me. Excuse me for the pronunciation English of the words. I know I make, I don't know what.
It's fabulous. I mean, what a really hard job it is to take your work, which is poetic and it is in a language, and then to bring it to an audience that's in a different place you've never been to before, in a language where we expect everything to be in our language.
You know, because you have this hospitality, it's very easy for me to do that. Yes, it has to do with how the atmosphere is and how people are responding.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions? And we can also speak in person. Let's thank our speaker, Fivi. And
thank you. Thank you very much.